Hey there, 5-1 Youth. Pastor Jordan back again for our second installment where we are addressing your questions from our Doubt It series. So, for our second question, we're going to ask, why would God create a world that he loved just to end it? Another great question. Questions about the end times and the apocalypse have captivated Christians for all of church history. The book of Revelation, the last book in the Bible, paints a picture of what the end times will look like. And it's full of vivid imagery and mystical language. And it's actually one of the most difficult books in the Bible to understand. Theologians continue to debate today what Revelation really means. However, all of them agree that the world that we know will one day come to an end. In fact, Jesus himself, during his ministry, confirmed this. In Matthew chapter 24, in verse 35, he says, "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away." Likewise, in 2 Peter 3:10, it says, "But the day of the Lord will come like a thief, and then the heavens will pass away with a loud noise, and the elements will be dissolved with fire." So we know that this world has an expiration date. But why is this? Well, the short answer is sin. When Adam and Eve disobeyed God in the garden, they brought sin and death and destruction into creation. And Adam's sin didn't just bring death upon himself as an individual, it affected the entire world. If we go back to Genesis 3, we see that after Adam ate the forbidden fruit, God tells him, beginning at verse 17, "Because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree about which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life." So the very ground that we stand upon was cursed because of Adam's sin. But we might be confused about why that is. Well, you have to think of sin, to use an analogy from the medical world, as like a cancer. When one part of an organism gets cancer, the entire organism is sick. Can you imagine if a doctor went up to somebody and said, "Well, you have brain cancer, but don't worry, we didn't find any tumors on your toes." Nobody would say, "Oh, well, I might have cancer in my brain, but at least my toes are okay." No, when one part of you is sick, all of you is sick. And in the same way that when one part of creation sinned, Adam, all of creation was affected. See, Adam's sin caused effects beyond just what affected humanity. Before sin, there was no hurricanes or earthquakes or other kinds of destructive natural disasters. And animals didn't actually have to hunt and kill and eat each other. This law of the jungle where animals have to kill each other to survive, that also didn't exist prior to sin. So all this to say that Adam's sin fundamentally caused all of the world to be broken, not just humanity. But you might be asking, okay, but what about Jesus? Didn't Jesus come to defeat sin and death on the cross? And he did, but Jesus only paid the price of sin so that forgiveness could be possible. The infection, the sin cancer, still exists. All it takes is for us to look around or to look at ourselves to see that sin is still very much a problem. However, God will one day remove sin completely when this world passes away. However, that's not the end of the story, because let's go back to Revelation and see that the end of this world is actually the beginning of a new one. In Revelation chapter 21, beginning at the first verse, it reads, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea." So in Revelation, we get this picture that yes, this world that we know today is dying and will one day completely disappear. But God is using that to create space for a new perfect world, a world that's no longer infected by sin, for all of God's people to enjoy for eternity. So we'll see that the world itself will follow the same pattern of Jesus on the cross. Jesus died, but only to be raised up and resurrected in the same way that this world will die, but it will be resurrected into a new, better, and perfect world. As always, if you guys have any questions about this or want to discuss these things more in depth, Christopher and I would love to talk to you, and so we encourage you to reach out. But until our next video, I'll see you then. Bye-bye.